I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step-family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this. Hello, welcome to the second episode in our series with Patricia Papernow. Dr. Patricia Papernow is one of the foremost experts in stepfamily research and academia and around the world, and is just amazing. She is one of our keynote speakers for this year's Stepmom Summit, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks. And you can head over to thestepmomsummit.com to get your free ticket. Hopefully you are tuning in because you listened to the first episode with Patricia. And if you haven't, I definitely suggest you go back and listen to the prior episode, because we're going to finish up today talking with her about the 5 challenges that all step families face. And then we're going to get into a couple more really interesting issues. And I'll tell you, Patricia and I started this interview setting out just to record one podcast episode, and we ended up just having the best conversation and getting so in depth on all these issues that I decided to keep all of it and make it 2 episodes. So here we are. I'll go ahead and dive in, and I hope you enjoy this episode as much as last, and I'll see you hopefully at the Stepmom Summit in a couple weeks. All right, so Patricia, welcome back. So excited to have you for 2 episodes. This is amazing. So in the last episode, we went through the 5 challenges, and then we kind of went on a little bit of a deep dive on the first 3. So let's just maybe give, for anybody that's tuning in right now that didn't listen to the first one, first of all, go back and listen to the first one. But just in case, how about like a 30-second review of the 5 challenges, and then let's dive into number 4.
So the 5 challenges are that step family structure creates stuck outsiders and stuck insiders. Step parents are stuck outsiders, parents are stuck insiders. And that step family structure asks a lot of kids. The second challenge is kids experience losses, loyalty binds, and often too much change too fast. And the third challenge is parenting, that parents and step parents all over the world are divided over discipline. Often step parents want more structure and limits, and parents want more love and understanding. And just a 30-second review, one-to-one time, balanced with family time, for parents and kids, and for couples, and for step parents and step kids. And parents have to retain the disciplinary role.
That was like really concise. I'm impressed.
Every now and then I can be concise.
It is such an art to be able to take these really complicated, lengthy challenges and break them down into like 30 seconds. And you just did it. That's amazing. So we went on a deep dive for the first 3 yesterday. Let's just keep on going.
So the 4th challenge is culture. We need to make a new family culture, but we have at least 2 very different cultures, established cultures coming together. And the 5th challenge is ex-spouses. Another parent outside the family, dead or alive, is a permanent part of every step family. So the 4th challenge, culture. One of the stories I often tell is it's Christmas. And this is the first Christmas in this step family, and everybody's very excited, at least the adults are. And stepmom starts decorating the tree with beautiful little white lights. Stepdaughter comes in, takes one look at the tree, bursts into tears, and runs to her room. And stepmom thinks stepdaughter has ruined Christmas. Dad knows that actually his daughter is used to colored lights, not white lights. But stepmom's upset and daughter's upset. If this goes well, Dad takes stepmom aside, out of the eyesight of the other kids, gives her a hug and says, "Oh boy, honey, looks like we ran into another one." And he goes upstairs to his kid and says, "Oh, sweetie, that was one too many, huh? I can't believe it's a white line," right? And he doesn't say, "Oh, what's the big deal?" He puts his arms around her and says, I know, honey, it's too much. And after she's calmed down, if this goes well, maybe stepmom and dad and stepdaughter and maybe her younger brother get together in the kitchen over Christmas cookies and milk or cocoa, and they tell stories. Stepdaughter tells stepmom stories about the colored lights and Christmases and why it's important. And stepmom says, "Well, you know what? Here's about me and colored lights, white lights," because stepfamilies don't share those stories. They have to tell them. First-time families have those stories in their bones. So those are the kind of differences, and they come up oftentimes at moments that you expect to be quite wonderful, like a holiday celebration, or quite ordinary, like, is it okay to stand in front of the refrigerator and eat? Which in my family, I was a single mom with my daughter, as I said in our last episode, and it was fine with me. I loved it that she was feeding herself. It was really offensive to my husband. In his family, you sat down to eat. You did not eat in front of the refrigerator. Plus, he had an Aunt Janet that he grew up with. It was very strict. So it just hit every bell for him. And it was ordinary for me. And here's this ordinary thing that happened. And he's upset. And I'm like, what? So those kind of moments happen often in a step family. In a first-time family, by this time, it has been long decided that we have white lights or colored lights, whether we eat in front of the refrigerator or not. And oftentimes, many of the things that we agree upon no longer even have language until somebody breaks an expectation. So one of the things in a step family is there's a lot of learning by goofing, I call it. And now there's a lot of advice to talk ahead of time, and it is important to talk ahead of time. It's really important to talk ahead of time about values and how you like to spend money, and if you have little kids, how you do bedtimes and those kinds of things. However, many of the habits and how we do things that are most core to who we are no longer have language until, as I just said, somebody breaks an expectation. So that's why there's so much learning by goofing. And if you expect it, it's easier. If stepmom expected it, she would have had a spike of, "Oh no, another one." And she would have taken a breath and said, "Oh God, I guess this is another one." We have to talk about life. Who knew? Right. So
to anticipate some of that stuff, is it helpful? And I know we've done this sometimes well in our family and sometimes not as well, but is it helpful to, try to anticipate any of these things, especially the holidays are an obvious time where, there can be lots of, hot button emotions going on between households and new families and all this kind of stuff. I mean, is it helpful to sit down with the kids and say, "Hey, I want to know about what your family traditions have been.
Absolutely.
Tell me about it. And what kind of new traditions would you like to see in this family?"
Exactly. Absolutely. It makes sense to sit down and talk. What's your favorite memories about Christmas or Passover? And what's your worst memories of Christmas and Passover? And what new things shall we do as a family so that everybody feels heard? And we can together start to make some new things, maybe something brand new that wasn't in either family or in our family.
And as a stepmom, I'm guessing that you have to put your big girl pants on, and you may not want to hear a lot about the first family and the things that mom did with them that you weren't a part of. But I think it falls in the category of suck it up, buttercup, and you have to just say, I'm going to be okay with hearing this because I want the kids to feel okay talking about it with me.
That's really well put, Cameron. And let's add in another thing. If you can pull up a lot of curiosity, that will help you. Suck it up, Buttercup. Pull up your curiosity. These are parts of your kids you don't know, your stepkids that you don't know, and parts of your new partner that you don't know. And yes, it's a little painful that you weren't there and that you're the new kid on the block. However, if you can pull up your curiosity, that may help. The problem is, and it's absolutely important to talk as much as you can, and this isn't one conversation, this is a gazillion conversations. This is many, many conversations. Can we talk about, did your family go camping, and what did you like about it, and what didn't you like about it? Maybe both families camped, but I'll bet you they camped really differently.
Yeah, totally.
That. And there's still that learning by goofing. We can talk and talk, and there will be things. It wouldn't have occurred. We actually did a lot of planning in my first step family. I had 2 step kids in my first marriage, 5 and 9. We did a lot of talking about Christmas and what we should do. And it turned out my step kids were used to Christmas with their aunt who traveled. And so they had really wonderful things in their stockings that they would open Christmas Eve. And then they would have presents on Christmas Day. Well, and my stepkids shared with me that was important. Well, we didn't have any money. And I came from a family where stockings were, crayons and colored pencils that the kids opened while the adults slept. So we made a new tradition that the kids would open one present on Christmas Eve. That we thought we had it covered. And then comes Christmas Day. And right in the middle, my stepdaughter bursts into tears and runs upstairs. What happened? We did this so well. Well, I went upstairs and she's crying. She said, pajamas. Pajamas. You got up. Like, what? Help me understand what's going on here. Here's what was going on. She was used to Christmas in pajamas. It never occurred to her to say she was used to Christmas in pajamas. My husband and I didn't own any pajamas at that point. So we were fully dressed. That was the first thing. And the other thing was a neighbor had brought over a beautiful coffee cake, and I kept getting up to eat a bite. And it was the third time I got up that she burst into tears. She needed to open the present start to finish with no getting up. Who knew?
Who knew? Yeah. But that's such an important point that there are going to be goofs, whether they are mistakes that, are sort of affirmative mistakes or just things that you didn't know. They're going to be goofs, and you have to navigate all this.
Well, and there's going to be a spike of arousal when there's a group like, and you can't avoid that really. It helps to know they're coming. It helps to be able to say, oh gosh, another one. But can you breathe through the spike of arousal? Okay, and wait till you're calm. There is a metaphor that I find very helpful, that making a step family is less like blending a smoothie. That language blended family sort of raises creates the wish or myth that we'll just all come together and make this.
It's a little bit of a misnomer.
Yeah, it expresses the wish more than the reality.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
A better metaphor is not so much that we're putting strawberries and blueberries together and making a smoothie. It's a lot more like we have a Japanese family and an Italian family, and we're saying make a family. And the Italians are slapping people on their back and picking fights and yelling and screaming at the dinner table, which is for the Japanese completely intrusive and overwhelming. The Japanese are a little bit contained. They're a little bit cool, which reads to the Italians as cold, uncaring. So there are going to be a lot of those things that you're going to need to navigate, not because somebody's doing it wrong, but because you're different. You're Japanese and you're Italians.
That's a good way to put it. Good way to put it. So let's talk about the fifth and last challenge, which is, I think, the one that I hear most about from the stepmoms that I work with, which is the ex.
Can we take a pause? Let me add one more thing to the last one. So I want to add one more thing before we go on to the fifth challenge, and that is remember, as the rate of change goes up, kids' well-being goes down. You're going to need to make changes a step at a time. A step at a time. If you've got 2 sets of kids, you're going to maybe find 2 or 3 rules at the most that you hold for everybody, and you're going to concentrate on civility and respect. You're not going to, there are so many step couples who make a whole slate of new rules for the whole family, and then it has I'm going to say that again. So often, step couples are told or believe that they should make a whole new slate of rules for the whole family, and that'll bring everybody together. It is true that couples need to talk. They need to work out the differences that they can and leave the ones that they can't. But a whole slate of new rules is too much change too fast for kids, and it inadvertently puts step-parents in a disciplinary role. So 2 or 3 changes at a time, slow. And that means if you have 2 sets of kids, my stepkids ate sugar cereal, my daughter ate grape nuts. I wasn't going to make my stepkids eat grape nuts. Are you kidding? And I sure wasn't going to let my kid with her soft teeth eat sugar cereal for breakfast. So here's the skill. I'm going to say to my daughter, honey, in their family, they eat sugar cereal. In our family, we eat whole wheat cereal. We have 2 different cultures here. Eat your grape nuts. When you're finished with your grape nuts, you can have a bowl of sugar cereal. And I say to my husband is going to make sure that his kids don't taunt my daughter about them. And if I hear that they do, I'm going to say to my husband, could you talk to Becky, please? I may say to Becky, honey, when you do that, that's really hard for Dina. That not, you will stop that right now. That's that discipline we talked about.
Such a good point. Such a good point. Well, that I think it leads us to let's talk about the 5th challenge, which is, I think, the biggest challenge for many stepmoms that I work with. They always, I have so many stepmoms who come in wanting to deal with a dynamic with the ex, and that is the 5th challenge. So let's talk about that one, because I think that is a biggie.
It's a biggie, and it's one you only have a certain amount of control over. And that's tough.
That's hard.
There is a cultural element to this. In Anglo-European cultures, most Anglo-European cultures, certainly in the United States, the family starts and stops at the front door. The couple is the center of the family. And so there is a firm boundary around couple and kids. That means when there's another parent outside the household, that's tough. And it's a little harder adjustment. In African-American families, the value is that the community takes care of kids. There's a much more communal, whoever has resources helps. Now, that's partly African communal culture. It's also a resilient response to slavery, where kids were snatched away from their parents frequently, and other adults stepped in. So in that culture, this challenge actually goes much more easily. Non-residential Black married dads and unmarried dads have much more contact with their kids than white dads do.
Interesting. I feel like we could do a whole episode on that. But.
Yeah, we could. But let's go back to your stepmoms. What's really hard, and especially if you're a stepmom, a recoupling of your ex-partner is really hard for moms. Even sometimes when it was a low-conflict divorce, the presence of another woman is really hard, and it's very threatening. And moms get worried about losing their kids. And they sometimes don't respond to that very well. So maybe it would help, Cameron, for you to give me some specifics. And actually, before we do that, so here's one thing to know. It's really important, stepmom, that you make it easy for your stepkids to have a positive relationship with you and with their mom. The research tells us that kids who have a positive relationship with both their step-parent and their parent do better. Now, if that mom is doing terrible things, we can talk about that in a minute. but the term blended family would make you imagine that your family starts and stops at the front door. It does not.
And that's something I think a lot of stepmoms don't fully appreciate when they enter into stepfamily life. I think you're of course cognitively aware that your partner has an ex and that the kids have a mom, but you don't really fully appreciate the impact that that's going to have on your daily life.
Really
from
don't.
The fact that you're going to have no control over where you live to sometimes when you vacation and all of those things.
Yeah.
And then throw in, you alluded to the high conflict situations when, if mom's making things difficult on purpose or, things like that, it just makes it even harder. It makes
it so much harder. So all you can, first of all, it is one of the hardest parts. If you have a high conflict ex, and even if you have a low conflict cooperative ex, your sweetie is going to be spending time with his former lover, How many people have to deal with that? And
yeah, exactly.
If they're doing it well, they're very friendly. It's going to work better for the kids. About year 3, I decided my stepkids were doing 3 Thanksgivings, ours, her parents, and their mom, his mom. It was too many with a little kid. And finally I said, look, we're going to do Thanksgiving, but we're going to do it at my house. So I have control. And we will invite your mom. And we started doing Thanksgiving together like year 3, I think.
And that's wonderful that you had the relationship with her, that you guys could do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, I have to tell you, she was not easy. She was basically friendly, but she was not easy. And I often said, I hire a saint to deal with her. The saint stands in front of me and is friendly and lovely and calm. And behind, I'm going, "Ay, can you believe it? What?" And that part of me is silent. That part of me talks to my best friends and my other stepmom friends. It does not say anything out loud.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think that boundaries can be really important and helpful when you're dealing with your partner's ex and sort of, deciding, you're going to have a certain amount of exposure to them just by virtue of the dynamic, but deciding how much you can control and then controlling the things you can control, right? Like, if it's a really high conflict thing, do you need to be at every pickup drop off? Maybe not. Maybe that's a boundary you can set.
If it's a very high conflict thing, I would advise that you not be at the pickup.
Exactly.
It's like putting gasoline on a fire.
Yeah, and it's sort of pulling away as much as you can while still trying to support your partner.
So some step parents and partners may have the idea that I'm going to show up with her, so I'll show her. Well, that's pouring gasoline on the fire. You're going to be much better off not showing up. You may, if it's a high conflict situation, you may have to have separate parent-child, parent-teacher conferences. You may have to sit in the back where mom can't see you when you go to, stepdaughter's music thing. And stepmom, when you are in the presence of a threatened mom, you are not going to hug your stepdaughter or stepson and prove to her that you care about them. That's not a good idea. That's just going to freak her out. You're going to step back and suck your thumb. Feel free.
And that's hard.
Give yourself a hug and get lots of hugs later.
What if stepchild, runs over and wants to give you a hug?
You give a brief hug. But I make you a bet, stepchild will not do that in front of their mother. I would bet my 2 feet. Maybe a very young one. Very, very young one. But an older kid, really early on, my stepdaughter's mother walked into the house and my stepdaughter turned her back on me. And I understood why. She really felt protective of her mom. But it was,
and you can understand why, but still feel hurt. So as a stepmom, how do you deal with those emotions when something like, let's use that example, mom comes over to the house and stepchild just completely turns their back on you. I would understand completely when that happened, why that's going on, but it still hurts. And you still kind of want to say, but I didn't do anything wrong. How do you advise stepmoms to deal with that?
That is a really, really good question, because I was about, by that time, a 15-year expert. I understood exactly what she was doing, and it still hurt. Now, that enabled me not to have to say, what am I doing wrong? I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong, but it didn't change that feeling of being turned away from.
Of course, yeah.
So I needed to take care of myself. I needed to go be sweet to myself. And later on, I needed to ask for a hug from my husband, who did not get it, but who could give me a hug. I learned this about my husband. He may not get it, but if I say, can I have a hug? He will usually give me one, and that helps.
That is good.
I also do have a couple of stepmom friends who get it, and that helps, as long as we're not bashing. As long as we're not making anybody the villain. And that's the only thing that I worry about sometimes with stepmom groups is telling a story of what's it called? Villainhood. That somebody's the villain.
Yeah.
There are no villains here.
Yeah. No, and that's good. And it's especially good to be able to have a network to vent to. And I have found that a lot of times that's when stepmoms will seek me out online or one of my communities, is when they don't have anybody in their life that is a step parent that understands what they're going through, And so thankfully there are more and more places where people can go, whether it's, to the summit or to my group or Beth's group or, whoever,
it helps,
has that community. And like you said, not for bashing, but just sort of to say,
I get it. Oh boy, does that hurt. I get it. And
it's like you were talking about in the last episode, the feeling felt,
exactly.
Yeah. So I feel like the X is another one of those topics that we could spend a whole nother episode on. And maybe we'll do that in the future. But for now, you and I were talking with some of your colleagues recently about the concept of later in life step families. So let's just spend a little bit of time on that, because it's something I think a lot of folks don't really think about, and it's really interesting and important. And by later in life step families, at least as I understand it, as I talk about it, it's sort of twofold, right? You have people that are getting remarried later in life and then, forming these second families or more. But then you also have, for women in their 30s and 40s, who are recoupling or marrying someone, settling down with someone with kids, what did their parents become as step grandparents? So it's sort of two different issues, but let's talk a little bit about that.
We have one more. The percentage
of the
population over 65 that's the part of the population that's growing significantly all over the world. We have a lot more long-time step families. Step families in
that's a good point. Yeah.
Who are long-time step families.
Who have been in the step family for a long time. Gotcha. That makes sense. There
are some specific issues that come up then. So where do you want to start in the few minutes that we have?
Let's start with the people who get married later in life or settle down with a new, their partner has passed away or they've been divorced, or, I think about my own situation. My husband and I got married in April, and his parents had been divorced for 17 years. They both got remarried to wonderful people in August of that year.
Wow.
And their partners inherited,
step grandchildren
and a new in-law and, all of these things.
Yeah. First of all, important to know that the divorce rate in the United States is at a 40-year low, except over age, I forget if it's 50 or 55, where it doubled between 1990 and 2010. So we have what we call gray divorce and gray recoupling. And important to know, the fantasy for later life recouplers is the kids are out of the house, the dog is dead, it's just us. But as you're speaking, and when you're both sides of your husband's family remarried, it wasn't just them. You were involved. So that's the first thing. all of these 5 challenges hold, and there are now decades of relationships. There's decades of an ex-spouse relationship. There's decades of cultural habits with, where we all went to our neighbor's house for Thanksgiving. There's decades of parenting and decades of parent-child relationships. And decades of relationships, several generations that step-parents are outsiders to. So all 5 challenges hold, and that can be quite stunning. And people become step-grandparents. And sometimes there are different kinds of step-grandparents. Some people become step-grandparents, as it sounds like in your family, to kids who are a little bit older and didn't have step-grandparents before. And all of a sudden, now we have a new set of grandparents. For younger kids, and then some people become step-grandparents just because your adult child has kids. That was my experience. My 3 stepchildren were in their 20s when I met my husband. They're now all in their 40s. They've got seven kids between them. Those kids, I'm just one of many. They just feel like people should have lots of grandparents. They have 6 grandparents. That's ordinary. Quite different if the kids are older when you come in. So one of the things, though, that's really important is elder care and inheritance in both long-term and gray step families. And this is also important for those of you who are 30 and 40. In step families, you need to be very explicit, and you need to step up and do your wills and your estate plans. And you need to make them so that if one of you dies, your kids from your first marriage get something. What we often do is we want it to be simple. And so we say, when I die, my partner gets everything. Well, I die, dad dies, he's maybe 60, 65, and his partner is 40. She gets everything. When are his kids going to get anything? Not for a long time. And even if she is the same age, if they don't have a positive relationship, which they may not, she may take it all and give it to her kids and not to her stepkids. So parents, make some explicit arrangements. It may be insurance, life insurance, term insurance is one way to do it, to make sure that your kids will inherit something. Nobody wants to think about this at 40. You must think about it at 65 and 50, but you need to think about it at 30 and 40.
And it can be a hard conversation to have with your spouse, right? I mean, I know one of my very dear friends, a number of years ago, her father passed away. He'd been sick, but it was sort of a sudden situation. And it was like you're talking about, he had left everything to her stepmother, right, trusting that the stepmother would do right by the kids. And my friend didn't want any of the assets. She didn't want any of the money. There were like some paintings and some kind of family pieces that were sentimental, and the stepmother wouldn't give her anything.
And that's another thing that step couples need to do. You need to identify the special things. That special painting, that cup that, my stepdaughter got when she was 10 from her aunt. I don't know this, but the kids know this. And here's the worst part of this. You probably need to revisit this every couple of years. So here's the other thing I want to make sure we get in before we end, and that is elder care. Dad has a heart attack. His adult daughter expects to be able to take care of her. And stepmom or his new partner, she may not even call him her stepmom, it just may dad's new partner, expects, I'm the new partner. I want control over my husband's medical care. And all of a sudden, adult kids are left out of their parents' medical care. So there are a couple of things, parents, that you can do. One is to make sure you sign HIPAA releases. These are releases about confidentiality for your kids. And you need to do this every time you're hospitalized or you change docs. But you make sure that your kids can have access to your medical carers and your medical information. The second thing is to think about what we call health proxies. And the health proxy is the person, if you're disabled, who takes over your care. And in the past, we've usually had one health proxy, and it's usually the partner. Well, oftentimes the partner and the kids may have a different idea. So one of my lawyer colleagues now writes with 2 health proxies, the partner and one of the kids. And he writes that they have equal power, either may make decision in the absence of the other. If they disagree, the parent stipulates which one has a say. And it might be my partner has a say, it might be my adult kid has a say. But there is a way to write a health proxy to make sure your kids have a voice in your care. Now, some hospitals also make you sign a new health proxy every time you're admitted. My husband and I both had major surgeries, and our hospitals had us bring in our health proxies. They scanned them. They didn't make us write a new one. These are such important issues, and they're not things that anybody wants to think about. And you do this in the service of your kids. And those of you who are Cameron's age and have parents and step-parents and in-laws, you need to ask them, what have you done about an estate plan and a will? And can we talk about what happens if you get sick? Would you be willing? Would you be willing? I coached my stepson to go to his mom's partner and say, we all love mom. Could you sign a HIPAA release so that we all can have access to her docs?
This is such good advice. And I think for women in their 30s and 40s, it's hard to talk about, it's hard to think about. And I know even for me, Craig and I have had a lot of these conversations and, about what would happen if something happened to one of us and we did our wills and everything when we got married. But he's the one that's really comfortable talking about it. I'm always the one that's like, I don't want to talk about something happening. That's scary,
Right.
But you have to force yourself to do it. I mean, these are just things that you have to do. And having those hard conversations with your parents is also important. And it's something that my financial advisor, told me to do years ago is just, have the hard conversation and just say, I know that this is not something either of us want to think about, but I need to be looped into what you're thinking. What are your plans and what do you want? And,
and would
I
you
need to have access to the things.
Would you come up with an estate plan and would you please share it with us so that we know what it is? We've just come back to ours 3 years later. My husband, in our case, I was the one who was willing and my husband was not. I dragged him through it. But his kids have now had a nightmare with their mother's Alzheimer's and their mother's husband, and she died, and now their estate. He's suddenly interested. And 3 years
when you see someone doing that, it makes it a little more real, right?
That's right. But don't wait till it's real, guys. So we're actually going back.
Such good advice.
We're going back to our estate plan and just to look through it again.
I'll say, Craig's parents have been, they're both getting remarried around the same time. They are both very on top of it all and sat down with Craig and his siblings and said, hey, look, this is, we know we're bringing this new person into the family. This is how we're doing it. This is what our thinking is. This is what you can expect. And I mean, they both were just super on top of it.
That's great.
I think is fantastic. And I feel thankful for Craig and his siblings and for all of us that they are that way. But I don't know that that's a natural inclination for everyone,
I don't think it is. And sometimes there's an inclination, but you didn't put it in writing. My stepkid's mother, my husband's ex-wife, told them they would get the cottage in the Berkshires and that they would get some of the art that is and some of her jewelry. She did not write it down. Or she wrote it down and then changed it. I forget which. So that was spoken, but it needs to be in the estate plan. It needs to be written down.
Yeah, that is, as a lawyer by background, write it all down, get it all memorialized, notarized, whatever you have to do.
And it's a pain in the butt. It's a
pain in the butt, and it can be expensive because to do it right, you need to engage, some legal assistance, and it depending on where you are in your life and your financial situation that may feel like money that you don't want to spend, but for the long-term health of your family, your step family, your extended family, it's really important to
You're
do.
doing it for your kids, and if you're trying to get your parents and in-laws to do it, they're doing it for you.
Absolutely. Well, Patricia, this has been, as usual, an amazing discussion. And I have to tell you all, we started talking with the intention of doing one episode, and there was so much to talk about that we sort of decided, spur of the moment, to break it up into two. And I'm so thankful that Patricia is always willing to spend the time with us to talk through these issues that, it's like just when you start talking about something, three other things come up. And I mean, there's just so much around all of this. And I feel like there's 10 different things that we could do different episodes on. So maybe we'll have more to come. But in the meantime, Patricia is going to be speaking at this year's Stepmom Summit. And we're so thrilled that she decided to come back. She is going to be one of our keynote speakers this year. And you've gotten a really great preview of all that she has to offer. And so we can't wait for you to hear her speak. And that is August 25th to the 27th. And you can head to the stepmomsummit.com and get your free ticket. So I cannot wait to see you on the 25th. I cannot wait to have Patricia back. And thank you so much. And thank you so much, Patricia, for joining us. This was really great.
But thank you for having me, because I'm just passionate about getting this information into the hands of people who can use it.
Absolutely. And I love that. Thank you.
That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, head on over to thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.